So thank you for being here for today's Mini Monday, Elevating Your Health with a Sip of Data-Driven Natural Solutions. And today we are going to be talking about Dairy Reactions 101, the many faces of dairy reactions. And little disclaimer here, right? This presentation does not constitute medical advice. It is intended for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And do not ignore professional medical advice or seeking treatment because of information contained in this presentation. And of course, if you think you may be having a medical emergency, immediately call your doctor or dial 911. Okay, so today's intention, right? Today, firstly, with anything that we talk about around our health, my wish is that you be present to what your health makes available for you in your life, right? Our health really makes it possible for us to author our lives. And so we want to start without that by being connected to that as the foundation of our dialogue. And then from there, we will dive into the fundamentals of different dairy reactions. I'm committed you understand what symptoms commonly correspond to these different dairy reactions. We will answer the question, is healing from a dairy reaction possible? And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about how we might work together if we're not currently working together already. So just one moment, I invite all of you here to consider what your health is for. Simply put, why is elevating and preserving your health and vitality important to you? And I'm going to be silent just for 5 seconds, give you each a moment to really get connected to what your health provides and who you get to be for yourself, who you get to be for others, what you get to create, everything that you see about this question. Okay. So, really that's what this is all about. My commitment through this work as people bring their gift fully to the world and inspire others to do the same. So thank you for taking a moment to connect to your why, which ultimately I believe is grounded in that, bringing your gift fully to the world and inspiring others to do the same. So dairy reactions, true or false, altered digestion. So in other words, gas, bloating, abdominal pain, or diarrhea. These are the telltale signs of a dairy reaction, right? Feel free to pop in the chat your vote for this, true or false. I said another way, if you had a reaction to dairy, you would know it because it would show up as altered digestion. So we won't spend too much time sitting here with this true or false answer, or question rather, but I'll just give you the answer real quickly. The answer is false, right? Certainly dairy reactions can show up as altered digestion, but they can also show up in different ways depending on the nature of the reaction to dairy. So the 4 dairy reactions we are going to talk about today, the first one is lactose intolerance. The second is a dairy allergy. The third is a dairy sensitivity. And then the fourth is a histamine intolerance. So lactose intolerance, dairy allergy, dairy sensitivity, and histamine intolerance. And my commitment is that you have a deeper understanding of each of these. And as we talk through these, just be looking for yourself. Do I believe that any one of these is true for me? Do I believe that I have a lactose intolerance or a dairy allergy, dairy sensitivity, histamine intolerance? And out of the gate, so starting with this lactose intolerance, a few things to know about this reaction to dairy is lactose is the sugar component of dairy. So lactose is actually a carbohydrate, and it is the sugar component of dairy. And to digest lactose, to break it down, we need an enzyme called lactase. So lactase is an enzyme that breaks down lactose. Lactase is produced in your small intestines. So lactose is the sugar, the carbohydrate component of dairy. To digest it, we need lactase. Lactase is an enzyme, and it's produced in your small intestines. A lactose intolerance occurs when you are not producing sufficient lactase to break down the lactose you consume. And symptoms of a lactose intolerance typically are strictly related to the digestive tract. So they might be abdominal pain, bloating, gas, diarrhea, and they typically occur within 1 hour of consuming a food or beverage high in lactose, so high in that lactose. I could say a lot more about how lactose intolerance develops. Said another way, what we would be looking at is, how does someone develop a deficiency in lactase? There's a lot we could say about that, but we won't get into that today. But just know, for a lot of people, over time, their ability to produce lactase diminishes as they age. So that's certainly a recurring phenomenon for a lot of people. Some people just out of the gate aren't blessed with a large amount of lactase, right? At a very young age, sometimes when they're newborns, they aren't producing sufficient lactase. But there are many other reasons why someone might be, not so skilled at producing lactase. We won't go into those today, but just know that these kind of reactions, a lactose intolerance, they typically are strictly showing up in the digestive tract, and they typically are fairly immediate, within an hour of consuming a food or beverage that is high in lactose. And lactose intolerance can exist alone, and lactose intolerance can exist as part of something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, also known as SIBO. That is simply put, when your microbes, your microbiome, which should be living in your large intestines, when it makes its way to your small intestines, that's not where it should be living. So if it does that, it's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And sometimes a lactose intolerance is one of the many manifestations of SIBO. In other words, for someone with SIBO, I wouldn't expect removing high lactose foods to be the solution. There would be a much more comprehensive approach required to heal from SIBO. Conversation for another day. Then moving on, we are looking at dairy allergies. Dairy allergies. So one thing to know is that the main proteins in dairy are whey and casein. The main proteins in dairy are whey and casein. A dairy allergy is caused by an immune response to one or more of the proteins in dairy. An immune response, said another way, this is when your body is producing antibodies against one of the proteins in dairy. So your immune system starts attacking a dairy protein. And in a dairy allergy, and any allergy, whether it's an allergy to ragweed or a cat or to dairy, the antibody that is involved is called immunoglobulin E, immunoglobulin E, and we write that mouthful as IgE. So IgE, also known as immunoglobulin E, is being produced and reacting against the proteins in dairy. So a dairy allergy, again, involves an immune response to the proteins in dairy. And the symptoms of a dairy allergy, they could range from flushing to a rash to hives to rapid heartbeat. Acute rhinitis is a fancy way of saying your nose is running immediately, like just short term, not all day long, but just immediate kind of nose running situation. Other possible symptoms of dairy allergy include shortness of breath, asthma, vomiting, and then worst case scenario with any kind of allergy is that anaphylactic response, throat closure, scary stuff like that where people need an EpiPen. And dairy allergies, these typically are pretty quick. They typically occur within 15 minutes of consuming dairy, irrespective of lactose content. In other words, it doesn't matter if it's a high lactose or low lactose dairy, because we want to remember lactose isn't involved in this kind of reaction, right? The proteins in dairy are involved, and our immune system is reacting against these proteins. So fairly immediate response, and can show up in a variety of ways, as we see here. Moving on to dairy sensitivities. Again, the main proteins in dairy are whey and casein. You already know that. A dairy sensitivity is also caused by an immune response to one or more of the proteins in dairy, as we just discussed. An immune response means your body is producing antibodies against one of the proteins in dairy. However, in this case, in a dairy sensitivity, it's not producing that IgE, that immunoglobulin E that's associated with allergies. In this situation, your body is producing IgG, IgA, IgM, or a combination of these. So remember that those first letters Ig stand for immunoglobulin, fancy way of saying antibody. So IgG, IgA, IgM, or a combination of these. I will say that IgG seems to be the one that's most commonly associated with sensitivities, but I do often, when I test someone for a sensitivity, and you can, well, I should sidestep and say a little bit more about that. You can absolutely test people for dairy sensitivities and for dairy allergies fairly easily with blood tests. Lactose intolerance, there are fancy tests we can do, but mostly they're expensive and not quite as useful as just seeing if you experience the symptoms associated with dairy. I mean, by all means, we can run a fancy expensive test, but when people are on board just to do it based on their symptoms, I typically go that way with the lactose intolerance. So to kind of speak to a little bit more about that testing, again, lactose intolerance, we would do it based on symptoms. Dairy allergy or dairy sensitivity, we absolutely can do it with a blood test. So again, different antibody involved in a dairy sensitivity than with a dairy allergy, different antibodies, I should say. And then with dairy sensitivities, the symptoms can be varied, really, really different. They could include acne, fatigue, chronic rhinitis. In other words, a chronically runny nose. Your nose is running all the time. Recurrent illness. So people who just catch every bug that comes around. I often think of a food sensitivity as one of the underlying factors of that. And dairy is a very common food sensitivity. Other symptoms of food sensitivities include PMS, irregular menstrual cycles, IBS, bloating, cramps, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, pain, rashes. So certainly some overlap between dairy sensitivity and even lactose intolerance, a little bit with the dairy allergy, but not quite as much. And then with dairy sensitivities, this makes it a little bit tricky because they may occur up to 72 hours after consuming dairy. So sometimes, people will think they might have a sensitivity, and they'll think, oh, I'll just pull it out and give it a day or two, or I'll just eat less. And the thing with that eating less approach is it just doesn't work, because if you do have a sensitivity and you're going back to that food every few days, you're constantly re-engaging your immune system. And another thing I just want to, highlight here is that these reactions may occur up to 72 hours after consuming dairy, again, irrespective of lactose content, right? So we want to remember that for a dairy allergy and for a dairy sensitivity, we're talking about a protein and an immune response. In a lactose intolerance, we're talking about a carbohydrate, a sugar, and an enzyme. Okay, so a little bit more about how those work, just reminding ourselves of that. And then we have a histamine intolerance. So Histamine is a chemical we produce in our body, and it's produced by two specific type of immune cells, mast cells and basophils. And when more histamines are produced than can be cleared or drained from the body, histamine intolerance develops. And this is a little bit a situation of the faucet and the drain. So if we think about a bathtub, this bathtub is fairly full, but it's not quite overflowing. But if we keep running the water and we keep adding to this, the water without draining it, after a while, the tub's gonna overflow. This looks like it might take about 5 minutes, right? So with the histamine intolerance, we are having our body is producing more histamines than ideal. It's also not as skilled at draining the histamines. So the faucet is too high and the drain is too slow. And that can be caused for a lot of different reasons. We're not going to get into all of the reasons here, but why the faucet might be turned up and why the drain might be clogged, there can be a lot of different reasons for that. Histamine intolerance symptoms, some of them include anxiousness, panic attacks, rapid heartbeat, dizziness, chronic rhinitis, again, chronically runny nose all the time, shortness of breath, flushing, nausea, fatigue, rash, atopic dermatitis, also known as eczema, itchy skin. These are some of the symptoms of a histamine intolerance. And when do they occur, these reactions? They typically occur within 1 hour of consuming dairy, again, irrespective of the lactose content. So these are not dependent on lactose content either, the histamine intolerance symptoms. So now we turn our attention to answering the question, can dairy reactions be healed? Can dairy reactions be healed? And the answer is maybe. Some can also be managed, right? So if we're just dealing with a lactose intolerance, and this might be a worthwhile time to mention that it's totally possible to have a combination of dairy reactions, right? You could have a lactose intolerance and a dairy sensitivity. You could have a lactose intolerance and a histamine intolerance, right? You can mix and match these reactions. But in the case of lactose intolerance, how I think about this is, okay, firstly, we can eliminate high lactose dairy. So not all dairy is high in lactose, but you can, look up a list of high lactose dairy, eliminate all high lactose dairy. That could be one way you proceed. Or if you can't imagine life without dairy and you don't have any of the other reactions, you could take a lactase supplement with high lactose dairy. And, Lactate is a commercially available lactase supplement. There are others that I prefer because they're just cleaner. They have less kind of like what they have added to it, I prefer versus the lactate option. But fundamentally speaking, you can give your body that lactase when you're consuming high lactose dairy, and you should be able to tolerate it well. And, there are situations when we are able to address the underlying cause, which allows your body to get better at producing lactase. I want to tell you, this is not always a slam dunk. So, if someone suspects they have SIBO, it's not true that addressing it will therefore make it possible for you to consume high lactose dairy without any symptoms. It may or may not, but certainly celiac disease, that is one for a lot of people, right? So celiac, as some of you may know, is affecting the cells in our small intestines and altering our ability to produce enzymes, one of them being lactase, because the cells in our small intestines are attacked and injured, so to speak. And so for some people of celiac disease, once we pull out gluten and we support and heal their small intestines, they begin producing lactase again, and they can tolerate dairy. Sometimes, not always, depends on the person. Then moving on to dairy allergy, right? So complete avoidance, certainly for anyone who has a severe reaction, we're absolutely going to encourage complete avoidance of dairy for someone who has a severe reaction. For someone who has a mild reaction, we might encourage a little bit of consumption. And the reason being is that we don't want it to turn into a severe reaction. It just depends on the person. So I would never make a blanket statement about consumption. I would make a blanket statement about avoidance. If someone has a severe reaction, they should completely avoid dairy. Yes. And then there is also, in some situations, there can be done something called medically guided immunotherapy, which ultimately helps your body be better at tolerating dairy when someone has a dairy allergy. This is someone who is going to see an allergist for this kind of treatment, but some very good progress can be made on that front in certain people, in certain situations. And then we have dairy sensitivities. In this case, I really am encouraging, if we've confirmed a dairy sensitivity, complete elimination for 3 months. And this is because it takes about that long to clear out all the antibodies against dairy. Fully appreciate that can be tricky, but this is, kind of the ideal situation is complete elimination of dairy for 3 months. Targeted supplementation to promote the healing of digestive tract and minimize immune reactions. So what we're trying to do there is there is a connection between what we would call a leaky gut and an overreactive immune response to foods. So dairy sensitivity or other food sensitivities. So in this situation, we want to remove food sensitivities, specifically dairy here. We want to support the healing of that leaky gut, also known as increased intestinal permeability, fancy term if you want to know that, put that in your back pocket. And then we want to minimize immune reactions, and that can be accomplished in a few different ways. If someone is low in vitamin D or low in omega-3s, or inflammation is elevated as measured by HSCRP, these are different ways we can support your immune system at doing a better job of tolerating the proteins in dairy. Those are some of the ways we might do it. And then after this time period, we might do a food challenge, or we might retest to determine if immune tolerance has been achieved. So kind of dancing back in that dairy world. I will say something else about these dairy sensitivities is that because we're talking about the proteins, in particular casein and whey, there are some dairy products that people tolerate better than others based on how much casein, how much whey. So I'll just leave it at that right now. But sometimes people do better with a higher whey protein versus higher casein protein when it's time to reintroduce dairy. And then we have histamine intolerance. And this is a trickier one. This is a trickier one because for histamine intolerance, there's usually a lot of different things we want to manage. And so you'll see this even in the recommendations, right? So for histamine intolerance, in a perfect world, we're doing complete elimination of dairy and other high histamine foods for 1 to 3 months. Now, I only do this in select situations. So when I'm working with someone, I really want to wrap my head around what they're reacting to, because doing a low histamine diet is, like doing backflips and singing God Bless America at the same time. I don't know. It's just really, really hard. There's so many foods, and a lot of them are really nutrient dense, like foods we wouldn't think about as being problematic may be high in histamines, or are high in histamines, some of them, and can be problematic. So when I work with people, this is really complete elimination of high histamine foods for a month is really, and it's certainly 3 months, is really a last resort. So I try to get a better understanding of what someone is reacting to from a high histamine standpoint through some shared tracking and conversation. And then we can be more targeted in pulling out the higher histamine foods, as opposed to, having someone walk away feeling overwhelmed by what is a low histamine diet, right? But inside of treating a histamine intolerance, we want to promote stabilization of mast cells. In other words, we want to make them, because mast cells and basophils, those are the two cells that produce histamines. Mast cells tend to be the ones that can be a little more trigger happy in their production of histamines. So there are different ways we can help your mast cells not be so enthusiastic in their production of histamines. So stabilizing those mast cells. We want to promote draining of the histamines tub. There are different nutrients that help your body drain histamine better than others. In particular, one that comes to mind is B12. So B12 is a cofactor for the enzyme that's required to drain histamine. And so that's one of the ways we might help your body drain the histamine tub. And there are a few others. Of course, we want to address the underlying causes of mast cell activation. Those can be caused by elevated inflammation, that can be caused by nutrient deficiencies, that can be caused by disruption of your microbiome. So some of the few different reasons, underlying explanations for mast cell activation. But certainly of all of these, this does take a little bit of a dance, and certainly additional labs for all of these are helpful to help us be more targeted in our healing trajectory. So here we have a summary of our dairy reactions. So lactose intolerance, the symptoms are digestion-centric and immediate. Again, they involve a carbohydrate, specifically speaking, a sugar, and an inability to break it down, not producing that enzyme, right? Treatment options are eliminating high lactose dairy, lactase supplementation with high lactose dairy, addressing underlying cause for some people really does make a difference. And then we have dairy allergies. Symptoms are systemic, right? They show up all over the body. They are immediate. Treatment options include complete avoidance, maybe a little bit of consumption, depending on if someone doesn't have a severe allergy, or medically guided immunotherapy when appropriate. For dairy sensitivities, again, the symptoms are systemic, show up all over the body, may be immediate or delayed, right? Can take up to 72 hours to show up. Treatment options are complete elimination for 3 months, promote the healing of the digestive tract, and support the body to minimize immune reactions, and food challenge or retest to determine if immune tolerance has been achieved. And then we have histamine tolerance. Again, those symptoms are systemic, typically immediate in histamine sensitivity. Treatment options include a low histamine diet for as short as possible, 1 to 3 months. Again, 3 months, worst case scenario. I very rarely grab for that. Promote stabilization of mast cells, help them be less reactive, support your body's ability to drain those histamines. I know I've talked to some people, sometimes we do use a supplement called diamine oxidase, DAO, to help your body process histamines. I don't usually reach for that until we've done a little bit of this elimination, stabilization, and draining first. Usually I don't reach for it until then. And then, of course, when we can, we want to address underlying causes of mast cell activation. I will just pause here for a moment. I know this has been rapid fire information and this little mini Monday conversation, but we have 2 more minutes here. And, if anyone who I'm not working with is interested in exploring working together, please reach out, schedule a 30-minute complimentary consultation. You can ask me questions. You can learn a little bit more about how I work, see if it feels like a good fit for you. Feel free to text or email or pop on the website wellempowered.com to schedule your consultation. And then at that point, if it does feel like a good fit, the next step is completing your health audit, which consists of 2 90-minute sessions conducted remotely. I think about these like discovery. We're understanding what's at the source of your health challenges, symptoms, or conundrums. And then in the second appointment, delivering you your solution. And then if you're a social media kind of person, these are the different places you can find me. And I will open it up here to see if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes here if someone wants to pop in with questions. Feel free also to reach out to we@wellempowered.com if you have any questions. I'm happy to make sure they're answered there fabulous assistant, Erin, mans the We at Well Empowered website email. And if she can't answer the question, she'll make sure to loop me in so that I can. And to me, this is really what it's about, making sure you have the information, inspiration, and strategies so that you really feel like you have mastery in cultivating and elevating the health and vitality that makes the most difference for you. So thank you for being here. What kind of foods contain histamines? Oh, that is a long, long list. So good question, Cindy. Everything from tomatoes to fermented foods, which we typically think of as really, really great for the microbiome, to alcohol, certainly high in histamines. Certain foods tend to encourage your cells to be more reactive. So like promote, make those mast cells less stable. So those would be things like, coffee, tea, stuff like that. Citrus is higher in histamines. Did I say tomatoes and spinach? Tuna is high in histamines. Leftover meat is high in histamines. So it's quite a long list. But if you send me an email at we@wellempowered.com, I will share with you a list on high histamine foods. And happy to talk to you more about it in a consultation. Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day and week ahead. Please feel free to share this with anyone when you get your recording. If you found this helpful, please share away.